Welcome to Tune In Tuesday, Old Testament History, Session 12, In the Wilderness, Part 3. There are many things for our learning in the Old Testament that are vital to a mature walk as a believer today. Moses' example of apostleship and leadership are high on that list, plus many other lessons of faith. The Lord had done a mighty work to poise the children of Israel to take the promised land. He had delivered them from Egypt, reordered their society, and provided for them. He worked miracles in their midst daily. But somehow, Israel did not realize how good they'd had it. Or maybe things happened so fast, it was hard to take it all in. Or maybe it was human nature that resists change. I don't know. But we surely can learn from them. In 1 Corinthians 10, verse 11, it says, "Now all these things happen to them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends, the telos, fulfillment of the ages are come. Wherefore let him that thinketh that he stands," and that's intransitive, so to stand on your own without the benefit of that example. "Wherefore let him that thinks he stands take heed lest he fall." So we need to take into account their experiences and learn from them, because somehow the adversary was still successful in fomenting dissatisfaction and dissent, even to the point in which there had been two conspiracies to affect Moses' leadership, one from within the top leadership circle and one from within the Levites. Israel needed to learn to respect the leadership of the one that God had called. We also know how that works in the New Testament, because God supplies a pivotal person with spiritual blessings that they share horizontally, which in turn attracts believers who array and intertwine around that central leader, and a ministry is born. Every church has started out like that, with a charismatic person, and then it grows from there. That interchange between the believers builds trust and gives that leader authority, and it takes a lot of time and spiritual resources to build that. So God doesn't take it lightly if anything or anyone tries to damage it. And that's what happened with Moses, with those attacks on his leadership. So God had made it abundantly clear that he was working with Moses, and no one, absolutely no one, was going to tell Moses what to do except God. But there were consequences to Israel's weaknesses and failures, the greatest of which was they were turned away from entry into the promised land to wander in the wilderness until a generation worthy of the prize had matured. But even after this rebuke, they still did not believe Moses. They wanted a do-over after God said, "Turn around." But God said, "No do-overs." Pharaoh had 10 chances to come around, the 10 plagues. Well, Israel had tried to tempt God 10 times, he said. Numbers chapter 14, verse 22. Numbers 14, verse 22. God said, "Because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall there any of them that provoke me see it." That was irreversible. Their cats had run out of lives, but they still didn't believe. They tried to do a do-over anyway, but it wasn't a do-over. It turned out to be a duh-over. Numbers 14:39. "And Moses told these sayings unto all the children of Israel, and the people mourned greatly, And they rose up early in the morning and got them up into the top of the mountain, saying, Lo, we're here. We can go up to the place which the Lord hath promised, for we've sinned. And Moses said, Wherefore now do you transgress the commandment of the Lord? He said, it ain't going to work. It will not prosper. Go not up, for the Lord is not among you, that you be not smitten before your enemies. For the Amalekites and the Canaanites are there before you, and you're going to fall by the sword, because you turned away from the Lord. Therefore the Lord will not be with you. But they presumed to go up into the hilltop. Nevertheless, the ark of the covenant of the Lord and Moses departed not out of the camp. And then the Amalekites came down, and the Canaanites which dwelt in that hill, and smote them and discomfited them, even unto Hormah. Well, it didn't work out very well, did it? Well, have you seen the glories of the Lord? Do you understand mysteries that millions have hungered for yet not understood? We've seen a lot of purple smoke, haven't we? But what is its purpose? Why has the Lord revealed it to us? I can attest to how effortlessly it came to me. It was revealed in bursts, in epiphanies, in moments of realization, but it must have a purpose. Well, why has it been revealed? What is our promised land? What river do we need to cross to get there? Their Jordan was only 100 feet across, yet it was an insurmountable barrier until they were ready, and they weren't ready yet. Moses and Aaron and Miriam had done their best to get them ready to cross, but they failed. Not due to the shortcomings of those three, but due to the fact that the people did not rise up and believe. Well, the same God beckoned to them from the other side of the Jordan that had taken them across the sea. The same God who had spoken from the mountaintop has spoken to us and is in us. So I say to you, when you see your Jordan, cross it. We've been filled with so much truth. What else can we do but pour it forth? So open your eyes and open your heart and open your mouth. Believe for opportunities to share your riches. God will put golden doors in your path and even golden bridges to cross your rivers to get there. That's why we can learn from the Old Testament. They succeeded when they believed. And we can too when we do the same. Hallelujah, sock it to you. After the Korah and Dathan incident, God decided to reconfirm his choice of Aaron as high priest. It was to prove that the high priest office was not due to nepotism, since Aaron was Moses' brother. He truly was God's choice. Numbers chapter 16. Numbers chapter 16, verse 37. Speak unto Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, that he take up the censers out of the burning, and scatter thou the fire yonder, for they are hallowed. So that those censers were of the 250 men that Dathan and Korah had got to follow them against Moses. And so the censers of these sinners against their own souls, let them make them broad plates for a covering of the altar. So every time anyone went into the altar, they saw them. For they offered them before the Lord. Therefore they're hallowed, and they shall be a sign unto the children of Israel. And Eleazar the priest took the brazen censers, wherewith they that were burnt had offered, and they were made broad plates for the covering of the altar, to be a memorial unto the children of Israel, something to remember, that no stranger which is not of the seed of Aaron come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he be not as Korah and his company, as the Lord said to him by the hand of Moses. But that was not enough. Now God would demonstrate his choice of Aaron by a miracle. Numbers chapter 17, verse 1. Numbers 17, 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, take every one of them a rod, according to the house of their fathers, of all their princes, according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods, and write thou every man's name upon his rod. And thou shalt write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi, for 1 rod shall be for the head of the house of their fathers. And thou shalt lay them up in the tabernacle of the congregation before the testimony, where I will meet with you. And it shall come to pass that the man's rod whom I shall choose shall blossom, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel, whereby they murmur against you. Because that's how everything started all along. Murmur, murmur, murmur. Verse 6. And Moses spake unto the children of Israel, and every one of their princes gave him a rod apiece, for each prince 1, according to their fathers' houses, even 12 rods. And the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses laid up the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. And it came to pass that on the morrow Moses went into the tabernacle, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded, and brought forth buds, and bloomed blossoms, and yielded almonds overnight. And Moses brought out the rods from before the Lord unto all the children of Israel, and they looked, and took every man his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, Bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the rebels. And thou shalt quite take away their murmurings from me, that they die not. God wanted the matter settled. No more murmurings, no more distractions, no on-ramps for the adversary to do burnouts on their highway. That's how all that junk got started. After Aaron's priesthood was confirmed, Leviticus 18 discusses how the Aaronites and Levites would be sustained by the tithes and offerings. They were to do the work of the Lord and serve the people. God wanted to make sure that they were supported so they could continue that work. That is the key to a functioning and growing ministry. Not only the response of the leaders to their callings, but people support them with sustenance so they can concentrate on the work without distraction. The next section in Numbers is regarding sanitation. Now, this is remarkable, because they did not know about germs until those were finally discovered by Pasteur about 3,400 years later, in the 1860s. They treated these things as ritual uncleanness, but that also successfully dealt with germs by quarantines, avoidance, and washings, without knowing their existence. Of course, but God knew. Chapter 19, verse 11, Numbers 19:11. He that touches the dead body of any man shall be unclean for 7 days. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he purify not himself on the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall not be clean. Whosoever touches the dead body of any man that is dead, and purifies not himself, defiles the tabernacle of the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Because the water of separation was not sprinkled on him, he shall be unclean, his uncleanness is yet upon him. This is the law. When a man dies in a tent, all that come into the tent and all that is in the tent shall be unclean for 7 days. Wow. So if a contagious disease or something caused someone to die, that would also protect those other people from spreading it. Isn't that amazing? Verse 15, and every open vessel which hath no covering bound on it is unclean. And whosoever touches one that is slain with a sword in the open fields, or a dead body, or a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. And for an unclean person they shall take of the ashes of the burnt heifer of purification for sin, and running water shall be put thereto in a vessel, and a clean person shall take hyssop, and dip it into water, and sprinkle it upon the tent, and upon all the vessels, and upon the persons that were there, and upon him that touches a bone, or one slain, or one dead, or a grave. And the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall purify himself, and wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and he shall be clean at evening. Isn't that amazing? But the man that shall be unclean, and shall not purify himself, that so shall be cut off from among the congregation. So nobody wanted that to happen, so they all obeyed. Because he hath defiled the sanctuary of the Lord, the water of separation had not been sprinkled upon him, he's unclean. And it shall be a perpetual statute unto them, that he that sprinkles the water of separation shall wash his clothes, and he that touches the water of separation shall be unclean until evening. And whatsoever the unclean person touches shall be unclean, and the soul that touches it shall be unclean until evening. Isn't that remarkable? This and the other laws regarding sanitation contributed to the longevity of the Jews, which cumulatively worked to the advantage of fulfilling their number one mission, which was to last long enough to ultimately produce the Messiah. Chronologically speaking now, the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness fits in around this point. Now, all their travels from Egypt onward are detailed in Numbers 33:1 and following. But here is another shorter list that fits in this spot. Numbers 20, verse 1. Numbers 20, verse 1. Then came the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the 1st month. This is the 1st month of the 40th year. And the people abode in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation, and they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. Not all those people who God said you ain't going to make it had died off yet, and they're still murmuring. They gathered themselves against Moses and against Aaron. The people chode with Moses and spake, saying, Would God that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. You heard that before? And why have you brought up the congregation of the Lord into this wilderness that we and our cattle should die here? You ever hear that before? And wherefore have you made us to come out of Egypt to bring us into this evil place? It's no place of seed or of figs or of vines or of pomegranates, and neither is there any water to drink. Well, gee whiz, I wonder when they would learn their lesson. It sounds like a skipping record. I might not be able to use that idiom much longer, because the younger generation does not use records. The adversary had found a refrain that worked, so he kept using it. That's what he does. When Moses and Aaron heard it, they started making intercession. Verse 6, Numbers 20, verse 6. And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they fell on their faces. Doesn't mean they were clumsy. They were making intercession. And the glory of the Lord appeared unto them. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth its water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. So shalt thou give the congregation and their beasts drink. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said to them, Hear now, you rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice. The water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. But the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, and said, Because you believe me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. Because God said, don't strike it. He said, speak to the rock. But Moses evidently was just so peeved, he didn't do what God said. Verse 13. This is the water of Mariba, because the children of Israel strove. Mariba means strife with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. Moses had finally lost his patience with them. Every other time they were in need, God had delivered them. You'd think they'd have learned their lesson by now. But even Moses lost it. Instead of following God's instructions and speaking to the rock and water coming out, Moses was angry and struck it. God told Moses that because of this infraction, his disobedience to that revelation, even he would not make it into the promised land. Now, some people may wonder why such a severe penalty was assessed for merely striking a rock with a stick. That Moses was barred from entry into the promised land. Well, the answer of that is in 1 Corinthians 10. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 1. Moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all did eat the same spiritual meat, and all did drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed, and that rock was Christ. The word them, that followed them, as King James says, the word them's not in the text. That rock was not following them like a puppy dog in the desert. The rock was the next symbolic event in the sequence. First, they crossed the sea, which symbolized one thing. Then, the manna came, which symbolized the next metaphor. And then they received the water from the rock, which symbolized the last thing in sequence. We covered that in the One Baptism of Original Christianity class. That rock was Christ. Not physically, it was a metaphor. That rock represented Christ. Living water came out of it. It was the third thing in the list of symbols. Now, it's illogical that it would switch to being literal on the third thing. The first two were symbolic, so the third one logically ought to be symbolic as well. Well, we already know that it has to be that because Jesus didn't pre-exist his birth, no matter what any biased translations may say. I handle that subject in the One Lord of Original Christianity class. As a symbol, the rock would be alluded to in other prophecies. God had been building a prophecy picture of the coming Messiah. He'd written it across the sky with the celestial gospel. He'd done the same with the Tabernacle and Passover. Well, think about it. What if the builders of the tabernacle got angry and disobeyed God's instructions when building a component of the tabernacle? Would that have incurred a severe consequence? I think you know the answer to that. Well, the same was true with the prophecy picture God was building about the rock, from which spiritual living water would one day come. Do you see the seriousness of the infraction now? The Messiah would only be struck once. He would be crucified. But after that, nobody or nothing would touch him again, let alone strike him. After he was raised from among the dead and ascended into heaven, all things would be under his feet. After the great mystery was revealed, it would turn out that he would be the cornerstone of the church. Woohoo! At this point, the 40 years had almost elapsed. Miriam had died in Numbers 20, verse 1, when they were in the wilderness of Zin, which corresponds to that list at Numbers 33:36. Here we start again in Numbers 20, verse 14. So now they're getting closer. And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom. Thus saith thy brother Israel, thou knowest all the travail that hath befallen us. Now see, the Edomites are related to Esau, who's Jacob's, Israel's brother. Verse 15, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians vexed us and our fathers. And when we cried unto the Lord, he heard our voice, and sent an angel, and hath brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of your border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through thy country. We will not pass through your fields, nor through the vineyards, neither will we drink of the water of your wells. We will go by the king's highway. We will not turn to the right hand nor to the left, until we have passed your borders. And Edom said to him, you shall not pass by me, lest I come out against thee with the sword. And to the children of Israel said unto them, well, we'll go by the highway, and if I and my cattle drink of your water, then I'll pay for it. I will only, without doing anything else, go through on my feet. And he said, thou shalt not go through. And Edom came out against him with much people and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border. Wherefore Israel turned away from him. Why? Because Edom was from Esau, who was the brother of Israel, of Jacob. They were related. The highway mentioned in verse 17 and verse 19 was the king's highway, which is the main trade route that went all the way from Damascus southward past the Dead Sea on the east side, all the way down to the Gulf of Aqaba, and it ran through the Edomites' territory. The Edomites were descendants of Esau, so they were related to the Israelites. Therefore, the Israelites did not attack them because they refused them passage. Instead, they took the long way around. So they went further eastward past Edom along the border between Edom and Arabia. Numbers 33-37 documents this along with some chronological information. Numbers 33-37. And they removed from Kadesh and pitched in Mount Hor in the edge of the land of Edom. And Aaron the priest went up into Mount Hor at the commandment of the Lord and died there. In the 40th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the first day of the 5th month. And Aaron was 123 years old when he died in Mount Hor. So he was 83 when they left Egypt. Now he is 123, 40 years later. Now we go back to Numbers 20, and there's more details. Numbers 20, verse 23. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the coast of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given unto the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the water of Mariba. That's where they struck the rock instead of spoke to it. Verse 25, take Aaron and Eleazar his son, bring them up into Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, and shall die there. And Moses did as the Lord commanded. They went up into the Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, those are the priestly uniform, and put them on Eleazar his son. And Aaron died there in the top of the mount. And Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they mourned for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel. As many times that it had raised its ugly head, their disobedience and lack of faith had been chopped down, and the violators suffered the consequences. As many times as it had occurred, you'd think that they'd learned their lesson. But no, it still continued. So please, Lord, let's not be like them. Let's learn from them. But this was at the near end of the 40 years, and it was the last gasp of dissent that we're going to read about now in chapter 21, verse 4. Numbers 21, verse 4. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom. And the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way, because this detour was difficult. It wasn't a king's highway. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Wherefore have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? The same refrain. For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loathes this light bread. In other words, they're talking about manna. And the Lord sent fiery serpents. Now, Rotherham translates fiery serpents as poisonous serpents. Bullinger says that it was figurative of their bite, making a burning sensation, because when they got bit, it burned. So there were poisonous serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, we've sinned. Oh, they're starting to learn their lesson. For we've spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed, he made intercession. And the Lord said to Moses, make thee a poisonous serpent and set it on a pole. And it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when they look upon it, shall live. So Moses made a serpent of brass, put it on a pole, and it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Now, how could just looking at a snake on a stick heal somebody? We need to recognize that whenever God energizes a miracle like this, there is immediate profit and ultimate profit. The immediate profit was they looked at the snake and they were healed. That's the immediate profit. Well, what was the ultimate profit? That was a symbol of the coming Messiah. How do I know that? Jesus said so. John 3, verse 14. John 3, verse 14. Jesus said, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. So it was a symbol of the Messiah. This also has become a symbol of the medical profession. The serpent on a pole is a symbol of healing. Well, do you think maybe Moses made some mileage teaching about that? Hey folks, the coming Messiah is the reason we're out here. Remember the promise God made to our ancestor Abraham, that in him all families of the earth would be blessed? Well, that means the ultimate blessing that would bless all families of the earth is that the Messiah would come through him. Well, folks, that's us out here in the wilderness, Moses said. And soon they were going to take the promised land, and then even more prophecies would unfold. So that's why it was worth it to endure hardship in the wilderness, because every step they took was closer to the promised land. Chapter 21, verse 10. And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in Oboth, and they journeyed from Oboth and pitched in Ije-Barim, in the wilderness which is before Moab, towards the sunrise. From thence they removed and pitched in the valley of Zered, and from thence they removed and pitched on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that comes out of the coasts of the Amorites. For Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. So they had taken this detour around Edom, but also they had skirted Moab, and then they come back towards the Jordan River at the border of the Moabites and the Amorites. So that's where they are. Verse 14, wherefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, what he did in the Red Sea in the brooks of Arnon. So here is another book, a history book. This is like the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah and Israel. It is a secular book that no longer exists. Verse 15, and the stream of the brooks that goes down to the dwelling of Ar, that lies on the border of Moab, and from thence they went to Beer, that is the well whereof the Lord spoke unto Moses, gather the people together, and I will give them water. So now, the 40 years has elapsed, and all of the complainers are no longer around, and the younger generation has started to assert itself, because here they needed water again. But this time, They did not murmur. It is a turning point. They sang. Verse 17. Then Israel sang this song. Spring up, O well, sing ye unto it. The princes digged the well. The nobles of the people digged it by the direction of the lawgiver with their staves. And from the wilderness they went to Mattanah. So they needed water. This time they did not complain and murmur. Moses got revelation where they ought to dig. They dug there and they got water. Verse 19. And from Mattanah to Naphthalil, and from Naphthalil to Bamoth, and from Bamoth in the valley that is in the country of Moab, to the top of Pisgah, which looks towards Jeshimon. So they skirted Edom and Moab, and now they're continuing north, back along the King's Highway, and so now they're going to ask the Amorites for passage. Verse 21. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, Let me pass through your land. We will not turn into the fields or into the vineyards. We will not drink of the waters of the well, but we will go along by the King's Highway until we be past your borders. And Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his borders. But Sihon gathered all these people together and went out against Israel into the wilderness. And he came to Jahaz and he fought. He fought against Israel. Well, that was the wrong thing to do. Verse 24, And Israel smote him with the edge of the sword and possessed his land from Arnon even to Jabbok, even unto the children of Ammon, for the border of the children of Ammon was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all the villages thereof. So at this point, they're above the Dead Sea, even with the Jordan River. That was the land of the Amorites, and they took it. Wow. So now we have the famous incident with that troubled prophet, Balaam. So they're at the border of Moab on the south, and they just took all the land of the Amorites. Numbers 22, verse 1. Numbers 22, verse 1. And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on this side of the Jordan by Jericho. And Balak the son of Zippor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was sore afraid of the people, because they were many. And Moab was distressed because of the children of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, Now this company shall lick up all that are round about us, as the ox licks up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was the king of the Moabites at that time. And he sent messengers therefore unto Balaam, the son of Beor, to Pethor, which is by the river of the land of the children, up by the Euphrates River, to call him, saying, Behold, there is a people come out from Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide opposite me, over against me. Come now, therefore, I pray thee, and curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, that I may drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you cursed is cursed. And the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the rewards of divination in their hand. And they came to Balaam, and they spoke to him all the words of Balak. And he said, Lodge here this night, I'll bring you word again, as the Lord shall speak unto me. And the princes of Moab abode with Balaam. See, now Balaam was a prophet. He had the Spirit of God upon him, but this was the Old Testament variety of spirit, and boy, it was strong. And you'll see what I mean. Chapter 22, verse 9. And God came to Balaam and said, What men are these with you? And Balaam said to God, Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, Behold, there's a people come out of Egypt that covers the face of the earth. Come now, curse me them. Peradventure I shall be able to overcome them and drive them out. And God said to Balaam, you shall not go with them. You shall not curse this people, because they're blessed. And Balaam rose up in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, get into your land, for the Lord refuses to give me leave to go with you. And the princes of Moab rose up, and they went back to Balak. And they said, Balaam refuses to come with us. And Balak sent again princes, more and more honorable than they. And they came to Balaam and said, thus saith Balak, son of Zippor, let nothing, I pray thee, hinder thee from coming unto me. For I will promote thee unto very great honor, and I will do whatever you say unto me. Come therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people. And Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, if Balak would give me his whole house full of silver and gold, I can't go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. Now therefore I pray you, tarry you also here this night, that I may know what the Lord will say unto me more, because he really wants to go. Verse 20, and God came to Balaam that night and said, if the men come to call you, rise up and go with them. But yet the word which I shall say unto thee, thou shalt thou do. And Balaam rose up in the morning and saddled his ass and went with the princes of Moab. Whoa, wait a minute. He didn't follow instructions because the men had not come to call him. He just went anyway. Verse 22, and God's anger was kindled because he went. He didn't obey the instructions. And the angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. Now, he was riding upon his ass, and his two servants were with him. And the ass saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand. And the ass turned aside out of the way and went into the field. And Balaam smote the ass to turn her into the way. But the angel of the Lord stood in the path of the vineyards, a wall being on this side and a wall on that side. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she thrust herself under the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall, and he smote her again. And the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right hand or to the left. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she fell down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he smote the ass with a staff. This is a fascinating glimpse of the spiritual world and the invisible work of angels, because they close doors and they open them. Most of the time, we never see what the real cause is, but somehow our paths are similarly directed. Verse 28, and the Lord opened the mouth of the ass, and she said to Balaam, Hee-haw, what have I done unto thee? Why hast thou smitten me these 3 times? And Balaam didn't even bat an eye. He answered and said unto the ass, because you've mocked me, I would there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill thee. This one ass talking to another. Woo-hoo! And the ass said unto Balaam, Hee-haw, am I not thine ass, upon whom thou hast ridden ever since I was thine unto this day? Hee-haw, was I ever wont to do so unto thee? And he said, Nay. And he said, now you're talking like a horse. No. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand. And he bowed down in his head, and he fell flat on his face. Woo! And the angel of the Lord said to him, Wherefore hast thou smitten thine ass these 3 times? Behold, I went out to withstand thee, because thy way is perverse before me. And the ass saw me, and turned from me these 3 times. Unless she had turned from me, surely now I had slain thee, and saved her alive. And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, For I knew not that thou stoodest in the way against me. And now, therefore, if it displease thee, I will get thee back again. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, your ass has saved your ass. No, go with the men, but only the word that I shall speak unto thee, that shalt thou speak. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. Verse 36. And when the Balak heard that Balaam was come, he went out to meet him unto the city of Moab. So the king even comes out, which is the border of Arnon, which is the utmost coast. And Balak said to Balaam, did I not earnestly send to thee to call thee? Wherefore camest thou not unto me? Am I not able to promote you to honor? And Balaam said to Balak, lo, I'm come unto thee. I have now any power at all to say anything. The word that the Lord puts in my mouth, that shall I speak. So he arrived and got all set up with sacrifices and stuff. Chapter 23, verse 7. He took up his parable and said, Balak the king of Moab hath brought me from Aram out of the mountains of the east, saying, come, curse me, Jacob. Come, defy Israel. How shall I curse, whom God hath not cursed? Or how shall I defy, whom the Lord hath not defied? For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. And that's true. Who can count the dust of Jacob, and the number of the fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my last end be like his. And Balak said to Balaam, what have you done? What you done unto me? I took you to curse your enemies, and behold, you blessed them altogether. And he answered and said, well, must I not heed to speak that which the Lord hath put in my mouth? So Balak says, all right, do over. I want a do-over. So they got set up again and did sacrifice again, and they got ready. Verse 18, chapter 23, verse 18. And he took up his parable and said, rise up, Balak, and hear. Hearken unto me, thou son of Zippor. God is not a man, that he should lie, neither the son of man, that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, shall he not make it good? Wow, what a fantastic prophecy. Verse 20, behold, I have received commandment to bless, and he hath blessed, and I can't reverse it. He hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither hath he seen perverseness in Israel. Why? Because of the intercessions of Moses. Before, with all those murmurers, there had been some iniquity, there had been some perverseness. But now, with this new group of people that didn't murmur, that sang, they were purified in a crucible of the desert, and there was no iniquity or perverseness in them. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a rhinoceros. Surely there's no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel, what hath God wrought? Behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion, and lift himself up as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eats of the prey and drinks the blood of the slain. Woo! And Balak said to Balaam, well, don't curse him and don't bless him. Don't say anything. But Balaam answered and said, Balak, didn't I tell you? All the Lord speaks, must I do? Well, Balak said, please, let's try once more. 3 out of 5, okay? 3 out of 5. I really want you to curse them. So they got set up again and made sacrifices before. Balak surely didn't learn his lesson. Chapter 24, verse 2. And Balaam lifted up his eyes. He saw Israel abiding in his tents, according to their tribes. And the Spirit of God came upon him. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eyes are open has said, he has said, which heard the words of God, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. How beautiful are thy tents, O Jacob, thy tabernacles, O Israel. As the valleys they are spread forth, as gardens by the riverside, as the trees of line aloes, which the Lord hath planted, and as cedar trees beside the waters. He shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters, and his king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brought him forth out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a rhinoceros. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies. He shall break their bones and pierce them through with his arrows. He crouched, he lay down as a lion, as a great lion. Who shall stir him up? Blessed is he that blesseth thee, and cursed is he that curseth thee. Wow. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he smote his hands together to get his guards to come up. And Balak said to Balaam, I called you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have altogether blessed them these 3 times. Therefore now flee to your place. I thought to promote you to great honor, but lo, the Lord hath kept you back from honor. And Balaam said to Balak, didn't I tell you, and your messengers, which you sent to me, saying, if Balak would give me his whole house full of silver and gold, I can't go beyond the commandment of the Lord to do either good or bad of mine own mind. But what the Lord says, that will I speak. And I ain't done speaking, buddy. And now, therefore, behold, I go to my people. Come, therefore, and I will tell you. I'm going to advertise to you what this people is going to do to your people in the latter days. Chapter 24, verse 15. He took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eyes are open has said, he has said, which heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes opened. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, your country, and destroy all the children of Seth. And Edom shall be a possession, and Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, and shall destroy him that remains of the city. So, the cherry on top was a Messianic prophecy. A star out of Jacob, a scepter shall rise out of Israel. This completes the 7th prophetic name of the Messiah that is in the Pentateuch. Man. So, I think we're going to wrap up here. Wow. Look at chapter 26, verse 63. They took another census, and this one is at the end of the 40 years. The very, very, very end. Chapter 26, verse 63. They took the whole census, and then here's the summary. These are they that were numbered by Moses and Eleazar the priest, who numbered the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by Jordan, near Jericho. But among these there was not a man of them whom Moses and Aaron the priest numbered 40 years earlier, when they numbered the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Lord had said of them, they shall surely die in the wilderness, and there was not left a man of them 20 years old and upward, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua the son of Nun. So, here they are. They're about to arrive at the crossing of the Jordan River. But there is one more thing that has to be done, and that is Moses cannot go with them. We will cover all of that next week when we are at the river's edge. Bless you.